the 21st century, the human race has found itself at a crossroads. Ancient systems of control, like religious dogma and divide and rule, have kept people in a state of limitation. Where social conditioning dominates, and where the individual's aspirations of freedom have remained suppressed. But the information revolution has triggered an explosion in awareness, an expansion in consciousness that has enabled millions to finally realize their ultimate potential in a world of increasing possibilities.
It's my view that we have confused what I call body-mind with consciousness, which is simply awareness. It's simply a point of attention.
Opening your eyes
rather
than closing them.
It's a point of attention. And your point of attention can be so narrow that it basically only it covers the realm of the five senses. In which case, if you're in that state, then because that you've got no other level that you are connected to in terms of hearing it, being influenced by it, of higher levels of awareness that can see a much bigger picture than this can.
Are you talking about intuition?
Yeah, intuition.
Things like this?
Yeah, intuition, knowing. All those things are expressions of connection to another level of awareness, all of which can be explained, quote, scientifically. But when you're only basically perceiving everything through the five senses, then you only have the realm of the five senses in terms of information to give you a fix on what's happening in the world, who you are, and all the rest of it. And that five sense information is basically controlled in terms of education, the media, all of it, by these family network controlled corporations that are essentially working to the same agenda of human enslavement. And therefore what's fed to the five sense level is information to program your sense of self and the world so that you will perceive, therefore believe, therefore behave in ways that suit the agenda for human control. It's interesting to me as I've traveled around the world to, to 50 odd countries, and I see, not least in America and countries like that, this absolute explosion of television channels, right? I mean, you could flick them forever and never come back to the start, it seems, sometimes. And there's a program on this, and there's a channel for this, and there's a fishing channel, and there's a golf channel, there's how rarely, if ever, do I see a channel or program even that is asking the question, what is reality? Where are we? Who are we? Where do we come from? Where do we go? What is this reality?
Why are we here?
Why are we here? Because they are massive first dominoes. Because once you start asking them, big questions get big answers eventually. So the idea is to suppress that. So you've got science, it's all a cosmic accident, and you're just an accident, and that's what you are, and you've come from oblivion and you go into oblivion. And I'm not a religious person, I just dogmatically believe in that. And then you've got the religions. I've said before that I feel that there was genetic manipulation that went on at some point with humanity, and what they did is they took one of the vertebrae out of the neck, so humanity's always looking up. Look, heaven's up there, God's up there, I'm down here, I'm just little me, I have no power. Oh yeah, so what do you do? You're a Christian. Well, I've got this man in a frock, and he tells me what I have to believe to please God and all that stuff, and I just do that, and I go to church. Yeah, and then you say to an Islamic guy, so what are you? Oh, I'm a Muslim. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, I go to the mosque, and this man in a frock tells me what to think, so I please God, and everything's the afterlife, isn't it? It's like get them sitting on a carousel horse and get them to believe that somehow they'll be able to catch the one in front, right? It's called hope. Keep them in hope, but hope never becomes manifest. So it projects even beyond this life. You do what you're told in this life, and then you'll have a good afterlife and all this stuff. It's always tomorrow. oh yeah, austerity now, and then we'll have economic prosperity tomorrow. It's always tomorrow. And then you say to a Jewish guy, so what does that mean? Well, I go to the synagogue and this man in the frock tells me what to think to please God, and it seems to me with the Jewish religion that, you know, God wants you to do something in fine detail about every flipping 5.5 minutes, and the extreme of it's unbelievable. And what's the time? What does God want me to do at this time now? And what you're looking at is the same blueprint called different names. And it's to hold people in a sense of limitation, I can't, little me, so we'll give our power away to that which we think knows more than we do. I mean, on one level it's God, but on another level it's the bloody president, the prime minister, or or whatever. And so that's what happens when you get caught only in the 5 senses. And your point of observation is basically the size of a pea. But and of course, all the pressure is to stay there. Because if you start to say things that, say you're in a Christian situation, or it could be any of them, and then you start to say, well, I'm having these thoughts, you know, I think there might be more to know. I think that so-and-so. You can't say that. You can't say you're a Christian, and you can't say you're a Muslim. You can't say you're a Jew and believe that, or this, all that stuff. And you know, it's interesting that, you know, people describe humanity as sheep, but actually we've out-sheep the sheep, because at least sheep need a sheepdog to keep them in line. We don't. We keep ourselves in line by dictating what are the limits of human perception.
This reminds me of the lion. You have the image of the lion on your book.
Right.
It reminds me of a story. There was a lion who was raised by sheep, and he thought he was a sheep his whole life until he saw his reflection in the pool and realized at that point he wasn't a sheep, he was a lion. And, you know, society really wants to create sheep, in a way, doesn't it? When in fact the lion inside of everybody is there latent.
You're absolutely right. And why do they want sheep? Because sheep follow the one in front. I've watched it. You can have one shepherd and a sheepdog controlling vast numbers of sheep, because they just follow the one in front, and if they don't, then they succumb to the fear of the sheepdog. But the sheepdog has become a sheep-sheepdog hybrid, which we call humans, because although people are sheep and follow the one in front, I mean, it is changing. More and more people are awakening to a much greater sense of self. You know, hallelujah, brother and sister. But what tends to happen in vast numbers is the sheep are following the one in front, and following the shepherd. Well, the prime minister said, and the bank said, and all that stuff. And then a sheep in the herd wants to break out. Now the sheep become freaking sheepdogs. You can't do that, you're mad, condemn him, and all this crap. And thus, when there is compared with the global population of 7 billion, when there is a absolute literal, compared with that, handful at the core who are orchestrating this global control system, then you cannot control a population of that size physically. You can do it in small areas with these people in uniform that come from where? Recruited from the target population, police and military, and serving their own slave owners, thinking they're free, or thinking they're fighting for freedom. That's even more kind of hilarious. But you can do it in a small area, but you can't control 7 billion people with tanks in the streets and soldiers at the door. You have to do it 2 ways. Well, it's a kind of basically 2 expressions of the same way. You have to so program the population that they keep each other in line. And so what you do is you create a religion. You watch the blueprint here. You create a religion, and then you break the religion up. First of all, you play the religion off against other religions, but then what you do is you break the original religion up into warring factions. So the religion is now warring with itself and with other religions, which you have with the Shiites and the Sunni and with the Catholics and the Protestants and all the different subdivisions of that, quite right. And then you create political parties and you play them off against each other. So, you know, you've got groups of people fighting over which mask on the same face should have power this time, you know, and it's all ludicrous. But and then you have racial conflict and these fault lines of various and many kinds, income bracket conflict, you know, the class struggle, which is just another way of saying divide and rule. All these things are done to have the target population at war with itself, policing itself, and people not looking up and realizing that the strings attached to me are the strings attached to the guy I'm fighting, right? And that's what happens. This is why it's so important. When you open your mind and expand your point of attention, so it's not only in the five senses, then these things become blatantly obvious to you. You can see the connecting dots. You can see how that connects to that, to that collective end. It's so blatant. I mean, you'll know this too. And yet people like that go, it's like my mother used to say, she had this phrase, she looked at me, gone out, which is a great phrase. She looked at me, gone out. It's like, what are you talking about? Conspiracy? There's no conspiracy. No, they wouldn't do that. No, you wouldn't do that. They are doing it all the time. And what I was saying earlier, I'll put this in some kind of context. We have been manipulated to believe, if you like, that we are our spacesuit. We are awareness, infinite awareness, points of attention within infinite awareness. And that is operating in a different frequency band to this world that we think we're living in, but actually aren't. You ask anyone walking down this path now, almost anyone, and say, can you see everything there is to see? And they'll go, in this space. Yeah, I think so, yeah. I can't. You can see a tiny, tiny frequency range called visible light, which is so tiny, humans are almost blind compared with what there is to see. According to mainstream science, and they're understating the case, I would suggest, of all the mass matter that exists in this universe, most of which cannot be seen by human sight, or even technology. If you take all the mass matter in this universe, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what exists, they say. Some people say, some scientists say it's a bit more, but not much. Visible light, which is the only frequency range that we can turn into a conscious visual reality, is a fraction of the 0.005%. And so all we're seeing is frequency range. And for our point of attention, which is not in this frequency range, it's like having two radio stations. You know, radio 1 and 2 will never meet because they're on different frequencies. But what do you do to get one of the other? You get a radio and you tune it to this frequency. Now you're getting this frequency, radio 1, you're not getting radio 2. You move the frequency dial to radio 2, now you're getting radio 2, not radio 1. But radio 1 hasn't stopped broadcasting just because you've moved your dial off it. Still exists, just that you're not aware of it because you're now on a different frequency. So the human body, what I call the human body-mind computer, biological computer, is the vehicle which our point of attention employs to interact with this frequency range we call visible light. If I don't know, I've got something in my pocket here, I don't know, yeah, I've got my keys. My point of awareness, my point of attention, my infinite self could not hold those keys because it's so different in frequency terms to those keys that they just go like that. In fact, they wouldn't even pick them up. So we take on this outer shell we call a body. I say body, mind, biological computer, so, which is resonating within the frequency range we want to interact with, therefore I can hold the keys. What the control system's done, which understands this, is got us to self-identify with the vehicle. So one of the chapters in one of my books is headed, I'm not David Icke. I'm not, that's the name for my experience. I am infinite awareness, having that experience. And once you pull people into self-identity with the body, as who they are, not as an expression of your experience, but who you are, then you're immediately into limitation. I can't, and little me. What power do I have? What can I do? And all this stuff. And that's the idea. And so we have this, what I call body-mind, which is the human body, which is actually a holographic. The whole thing's holographic. So many scientists are now beginning to see the bloody obvious that this is not solid. It's holographic. It's all an illusion. And you have the mind, which is basically what people call the auric field, the electromagnetic field. Now that is the vehicle for our infinite awareness to experience this reality. And if you are aware of your true self while having this experience, you're in this world physically, illusory physically, through the vehicle, and you're interacting with it. But you've also got this intuitive insight, knowing, all the things that you mentioned earlier, which is feeding you a big picture, a bigger picture. So you're in the world, but you're not of it in terms of your point of ultimate observation.
When we come back, the inner workings of the modern matrix.
What the whole control system is designed to do is to pull our point of attention into the vehicle to such focus that this reality is all we can perceive.